Oh, hey, thanks for joining me today. Jerrel here. It's the holiday season. I thought it would be fun if we took the opportunity to rank all the Christmas reindeer based on their power level. So we will be using power scaling. We will assign them a ranking based on their feats, what we know from the lore of Christmas, and we'll just be trying to figure out which reindeer place in the sort of higher tiers and which end up in the lower tiers based on what we know about their characters and their feats that have been shown to us. So let's have some fun today with this tier list, and we'll switch over to a tier list that I prepared earlier. Okay, you can see that we have a couple categories here. We have Universe Buster will obviously be the strongest tier, that goes without saying. Then you have the Galaxy Buster, Planet Buster, Moon Buster, Continent Buster, City Buster, Building Buster, and Boulder Buster. So obviously the stronger characters will end up there, and then the weaker ones will end up at the lower buster. So we have Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen, and Rudolph. So let's go ahead and get things started with Dasher. Now, what we know about Dasher is that he's mostly speed-based. A lot of the feats that we've seen, he's basically the fastest of the reindeer, even if he doesn't have the raw power. We haven't seen him do a lot of damage in terms of his feats. He wins most of his fights, and that's what I really like about Dasher, is that he wins through his speed. He has lost a couple fights due to just not having the raw damage output, but I do enjoy his fight scenes, as they tend to be pretty interesting. It's not just about hitting things really hard. But his main weakness is that he needs big open spaces to build up speed and momentum. And later in the series, he does make up for his lack of strength using the Satoken, but he only has the Satoken up to ×3. So Satoken ×3 is a 3 times multiplier on his base power. But we have been seeing him train in the latest arcs. But unfortunately, like, he doesn't have a lot of mana-based abilities. I don't know. I might move this later on, but I'm feeling Dasher's probably. Oh man. I mean, I'd say probably pre-Satoken ×3 Building Buster, but I think with Satoken he probably is a City Buster. We'll put Dasher up with City Buster, but we're going to see, because I think he's going to get into some really good fight scenes in the current arc. So next we'll look at Dancer, who we've seen is primarily a mana-based character. Uses a lot of mana. I think she's had some really good fight scenes. We've seen her with insanely big energy attacks. I think she's about 50-50 on the fights that she's won and lost so far. But that, I mean, it's kind of messed up because they always put Dancer in fights where she has like a huge disadvantage. And I think that's why I really like Dancer's fight scene. She's really fun. She doesn't have good melee, but the fact that she's constantly like, what I like about her fight scenes is she usually gets some new mana attack that we haven't seen before. She's definitely has more damage output than Dasher, so I'll put her at Continent Buster. I think Dancer's pretty comfortable there. All right. We'll see how we line up with the rest of the roster as well. So next we're going to look at Prancer. And Prancer's main feats that we see is the Mirror Clone ability, the teleporting. And Prancer tends to have pretty balanced melee and mana-based abilities. But I think Prancer probably has one of the higher win rates when it comes to the fights and the feats that we've seen. And they usually put Prancer against like the weird powers, you know? So it's kind of hard to say what the deal is, because in terms of just like raw damage output, Prancer doesn't normally get to fight, you know, like the raw strength characters. They put Prancer up against like the weird powers, which is fun. But because of the balance of the mana and the melee, a decent fighter. But I mean, like with the Mirror Clone ability and teleporting, like, so Prancer was introduced as an antagonist for like a whole arc, and then eventually turned into an ally. And it was kind of annoying because as an antagonist, Prancer seemed stronger. But then when he became an ally, he didn't seem that strong, which is kind of annoying. But I kind of feel like they're still going to do more with his character. They seem like they're leading up to something. Oh, this is really disappointing. Oh my god, I'm feeling really awful putting Prancer at City Buster. I don't like that. Oh my god, I'm so... I thought I was going to put Prancer higher on the list. I'm actually pretty bummed out about it. Okay, so next we're going to look at Vixen. And Vixen has primarily mana-based blasts. There's a lot of... Usually when it comes to the beam struggles, Vixen is the one that we see the most of. You don't see a lot of beam struggles from the other reindeer, but Vixen tends to be the one engaged with all of that. And often if it's one of the other reindeers that it's like struggling in a beam struggle, Vixen's the one that comes in for the save. So, yeah, I think Vixen, and we've seen Vixen have crazy damage output. The latest arc had Vixen take down the creatures from Mars. Vixen wiped out an entire... There was like an entire city full of the Mars creatures, and then Vixen wiped them all out with that massive... the mana wave, or what was it called? The mana spiral... The mana unending spiral wave. And that was cool. That's the first time we've seen that, so obviously, like, Vixen's going to be improving that, but... And then there was, of course, there was the line where Rudolph said, I couldn't believe Vixen managed to hold back that much power. So I think that means that if Vixen went, like, full power with the unending spiral wave, then, I mean, who knows what kind of damage output Vixen can have. But Vixen's crazy. She's had some great feats. She one-shot the Abominable Snowman in, like, the third arc. So... mana output is insane. And of course, Vixen has recently picked up the Esper summoning, so Vixen can manifest, you know, summons just out of raw mana. So we still haven't seen the absolute limit of Vixen's power yet, but she tends to lose out in, like, the melee fights. But the mana stuff is really cool. I'm going to put Vixen at Moonbuster, so that's pretty rad. Okay, so next we're going to look at Comet. And Comet's one of my favorite characters. So if you like sort of jumped into the series later on, you didn't watch from the very beginning. Comet was killed by Krampus earlier in the series, and then Comet was then restored to life. But the time that he spent dead, he ended up in the underworld training, and he gained White Shadow based powers. And I know that there was like the whole White Shadow arc where they were just fighting the monsters with the White Shadow's powers, and the White Shadow creatures. And then Comet is the only one of the reindeers that has access to White Shadow-based powers. So that's insane. So he's already very tough to combat, and he already has great melee as well. I think we've only ever seen him lose 2 melee fights. I'm trying to think if there were any more. But I think he only lost 1 melee fight, and that was against the Cyborg Father Time. And that Cyborg Father Time fight was like, oh my god! Like there are iconic fights, right? There's Rock Lee versus Gaara, there is Goku versus Frieza on Planet Namek, and there's Comet versus Cyborg Father Time. Holy crap! I don't think that we've, because you know, like the dark side, like the it's implied that there's some sort of like a White Shadow consciousness. You know, like Comet has blacked out a couple times, and then the fights ended, and he didn't remember what happens, and there's like residual energy on the field. So, based on that, based on his feats, I think Comet's a Planet Buster, and we still haven't seen, because we've seen a lot of fights with the monsters doing the White Shadow powers, and we haven't seen Comet access all of his abilities yet. And who knows what happened to him, you know, in the time that he spent dead before he was revived. So, awesome. I'm comfortable putting Comet at Planet Buster. Next, we're going to take a look at Cupid. Now, Cupid's an interesting one, because Cupid really relies on... I mean, all of Cupid's fights rely on the opponents, right? So Cupid generally has like absorption and redirection based mana powers. We know that Cupid doesn't exactly have good melee abilities, but he has illusion abilities, so he's a technical fighter. I always enjoy the Cupid fights. It's not necessarily about the raw strength. It's more about the technical fights. It's sort of like Uryu from Bleach. I really enjoy his fights. I kind of feel like Cupid is kind of like the Uryu of the Christmas reindeer here. He has the illusion powers, so he can like do cool stuff, and he has very high mana reserves, which we know because we've seen a couple montages where he's been training his mana reserves to have more. A lot of his fights early on in the series, he was losing fights because his mana kept running out, and so he's been through a couple arcs. He's been training and training, and then he absolutely flexed. Do you remember the fight where Santa got possessed by the White Shadows, of course, and then the White Shadows came after the reindeer. Then it was up to Cupid. Cupid was the only one left to stop possessed Santa, and then Cupid took him out just with his illusions and his monstrous mana reserves. And then Cupid also has the Wintercloak Prelude. So Cupid doesn't have the full Wintercloak form. He has the Wintercloak Prelude, so it's a 5 times multiplier, so it's not as much. And we know that right now he can only maintain the Wintercloak form for about like 5 minutes. Oh man. But see, here's the thing, like something normally happens to him once he starts his Wintercloak form. It's usually him like steamrolling the opponent, and then something bad happens to him. So it's hard to say. This is one that I feel really weird about, because he doesn't really have the raw damage output that Comet has. I think he has a little bit less damage output than Vixen, but he has Wintercloak. And I know it's only Prelude, it's a 5 times. Okay, look, if he wasn't in Wintercloak form, then I'd say Continent Buster. With Wintercloak, 5 times multiplier, easily. Moonbuster. Okay, Donner. Guys, I don't even need to say this, right? So Donner trained with the Celestial Wolves, obviously, and he gained his Celestial ability. So, again, obviously Donner was the reject. He was born without mana. He went through his entire childhood, and everyone sort of... they ostracized him because he didn't have mana, and then he went and trained with the Celestial Wolves, and oh my god, I believe the term for this guy is Glow Up. Just the raw damage output, the beam struggles, bigger beam struggles than Vixen. I'm gonna say it now. He has massive big abilities, but then again, Donner's thing is that he's always had kind of low energy reserves. So this is gonna be tough, right? Oh shoot, I feel really bad here. Oh, I don't know what to do. Look, I'm gonna put him on Planet Buster level because we've seen his feats. Let me think here. There was the arc focused around the Sandman army. Yeah, and I think before Rudolph got there, it was Donner fighting Sandman one-on-one, and he actually staggered Sandman a number of times before he ran out. I think if he trained and he got better mana, well, he doesn't use mana. That's the thing. We don't fully understand how celestial abilities work. But you know what? I'm gonna put him on Planet Buster because I think absolutely and he was holding back, he was focusing. I think, yeah, it was Cupid was one of the only Reinder that were conscious for that fight. He was commenting on the stuff. He was saying oh man, if Donner had trained. Because he's kind of unfocused, I'm going to put him on Planet Buster. And then Blitzen, I think Blitzen... Oh, of course, and then Donner has the barrier abilities as well. Yeah, I'm going to put... I think I'm comfortable putting... But, I mean, if you don't agree with that, you can let me know in the comments. Let's see, next is Blitzen. And I think Blitzen might have my favorite arc throughout the story. He's just... Well, I don't even need to say this. Everyone knows he's part cyborg. So he was nearly killed early on in the series when he was fighting the New Year Dragon. And then he was on the verge of death, and he was revived with cybernetics. So he's already enhanced. So on just a pure raw physical level, obviously Blitzen is the strongest just when it comes to sheer lifting force. And then we've seen his strikes. He's shattered, mountains. There was in the 4th arc, what was it, where he split the mountain in half when they were looking for the unending fountain of gold. And so Blitzen was the one that split the mountain in half. But in terms of his mana, we've only seen him do small mana attacks, and then he has very limited energy attacks due to his cybernetics, so he's lost access to a lot of his mana abilities after he was converted to cyborg. but we've seen him tank like insane attacks, like stuff that knocked out Rudolph. Remember when Rudolph got knocked out? What fight was that? It was... Oh, it's the return of the Abominable Snowman, where it was the genetically modified clone with enhancements, and then they had DNA from all the reindeer, and so that was like the, you know, whatever that, and then Rudolph got knocked out, and then Blitzen was the only one left, and then the latest arc has shown him getting upgrades with his artillery, because you know he has that massive salvo ability, and then he was warned never to release all of his missiles at once. And I don't know, because we still haven't seen the upper limits of his power. Like he's always stated like 5% power, 7% power. I'm not comfortable. You know what? I'm just gonna double check my notes here. I'm not feeling right. You know what? I'm kind of feeling okay. I don't know if I'm gonna regret this later. Hold on. Blitzen is not a Galaxy Buster. I'd say Blitzen is Planet Buster, but I'm looking at Comet now with the white shadow-based powers, and I might put it on Galaxy Buster because I haven't caught up with the manga yet, but I have heard from people that Comet might get... It's shown that he has something that's like Satoken, which is already like a 3x multiplier. I'm gonna put Comet on Galaxy Buster. I feel like it'd be wrong if I didn't. And then of course, obviously the main protagonist, Rudolph. I mean, it's obvious Universe Buster, easily. And that's because Rudolph is insanely high mana reserves. More than anyone else has the most mana reserves. He has some, obviously he has very good mana abilities. He's been training his whole life. For his mana-based attacks, and then it's shown that he has some celestial abilities. He has some white shadow-based abilities, and he has the full Ventricloak form, which is ×10 multiplier on his base power level. And then he also has the Satoken, which he can vary between 2x and 5x multiplier, which is already insane because that stacks with the Ventricloak. So Rudolph is obviously going to be universe level, so that's Universe Buster. So, and I mean, Rudolph's won about 80% of his fights anyway, so that's easy. That's easy. And then his beam struggles, obviously, his red nose. What is it? What's the English translation for it? The hyperbaric red nose blast cannon. Is that what it is in English? So, and that thing was insane. That wiped out an entire mountain by accident, and so that's pretty insane. And then of course we had that arc where Santa came back and he was just jacked. He was messed up. His clothes were all torn up, and then, you know, like Donner was like, what happened? He said, I was training with Rudolph, but I don't think I will ever do that again. All right, guys, that's it. That is my tier list for ranking the power scaling for all the Christmas reindeer. If you agree or if you disagree, please let me know in the comments why you agree or disagree. Do you think that the reindeer should be in other categories? They're still, you know, the series is still going. They're still writing it. We don't know how much longer Christmas is going to run for. All right, thanks everyone. Take care. Have a great Christmas, and don't forget to decorate your house, or Krampus will come and punish you for not decorating. Okay, take care. See ya.